You're listening to the Grind Line Podcast.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. I'm your host, Greg, releasing episode 319. I'm here tonight with Ryan and Tyler. Guys, the Red Wings won a hockey game after losing 2 in a row with a pretty, mediocre game against the Utah Hockey Club, even though the score doesn't look like it would indicate the state of the game. There's been some news around recalls, guys returning, people getting big milestones, but how you guys doing tonight?
Meh. I'll leave it at that.
That's
meh.
it? Just that?
But that's the state of this team. I'll leave it's simple and to the point. I think it's direct enough.
Fucking embarrassing is what it is. But I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back on with all of you guys and here to defend myself.
About what? About not showing up, or about some really bad takes you had about Petr Mrazek?
In general.
I just wanted to clear the air on that and saying I just don't think Petr Mrazek is good, period. But I can give him credit. He did have a good little run there.
Yeah, until he got smacked in the head and is now out.
Yeah.
Is he out though because of lower body though versus smacked in the head?
I think it's a lower body.
Is it lower body? So he got hit in the leg first, and he landed on his arm, and then he got kicked in the head. So it looked like when he went off, he was holding his arm. But if it's lower body, then it's from getting hit in the leg. Basically, I don't know.
Either
in any
way,
case, it should have been goaltender interference, is what it should have been.
Great.
No,
Well,
it's
it
bad.
could potentially be good.
No, it's absolutely not good. Petr Mrazek was your best goalie since you picked him up. He was performing very well, and now he is out. But that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the game against the Utah Hockey Club. The Detroit Red Wings beat the Utah Hockey Club 5-1. The ice was a disaster. It was really bad. And even McClellan said after, it was just slush everywhere. It was stopping them from being able to develop plays to get scoring chances. So they only had 5 shots on net through 2 periods, which is pretty embarrassing. But just overall, sloppy, ugly game. But they do come out with a 5-1 win. And that is a pure puck luck. There was a good defensive effort. Lyon made some good saves in relief. But that was mostly a puck luck kind of game. Highest impact on the team were guys like Simon Edvinsson, Alex DeBrincat, who continues his tear, Marco Kasper, who continues his tear, Tarasenko, who apparently took the criticism to heart and went out and had a really good game. Craig Smith and Austin Watson are on the top 2. And it was also the return of Jeff Petrie, who was activated from IR. So you saw Lagesson get sent back to Grand Rapids. But what did you think of the Utah game?
Meh. I'll take a little bit of Ryan's page there. Yeah, I mean, it's a win. You don't apologize for winning games, especially at this stage. But not an ideal game. You take the win, you move on with it. But 9 times out of 10 when you play like that, you're not going to win. They gave up way too many opportunities, and you're lucky your shooting percentage was good. Otherwise, you lose another game likely. So. But they did put 5 in the net. So,
Yeah, it's great you put 5 in the net, but it's also the fact it's a game you have to win and you should win. And they did that. And I'm glad that it came at the fact that you had secondary scoring and guys that maybe aren't typically on the score sheet, but it came at a cost of you lost the goaltender you just acquired. And as I'm rewatching the replay, he took a knee to the arm. Looks like he was bent over for that. The leg to the head, I think, was less of an impact than it was on his arm. I don't know. We can speculate all day. Either way, it wasn't good. And you had Lyon essentially play an entire hockey game for you in a great spot. I think what was important out of this game with Utah is that the PK actually, other than the first goal, looked good. They came out,
looked damn
actually
good.
Didn't allow goals. Again, after the first one, it was a weird turnover in the corner. It came out, ended up being a one-time opportunity right there in the middle in the freaking Ovi's office, and they scored. I get it. It's not an ideal scenario for the Wings, but what's important is after that point, you were not even 4 minutes into the game, and you held them throughout the rest of the match. That's what stands out more than anything. Yes, PK still the black hole, and honestly, if they had even a remotely better penalty kill over this stretch of 13 games since the break, 15 games, excuse me, I think it's a completely different result, and they maybe win 2 or 3 more games. And now you're at 500 hockey, and guess what? You're still in a wild card spot potentially. But I think what's important is that they won. Now they have to just nut up or shut up against Colorado tonight, and you see what happens. But there's really no margin for error at this point. But they won 2 points that they needed to win. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, you're right with, I think it was like an 80% penalty kill last night, which if you could do even half that, I mean, if you could bring it up, you were letting in a goal, 2-3 penalty power play goals per game. And now if you can only let in, if you get 5 and you let in 1, that's fantastic. And it's a turnaround. And if you look at the chart, everyone had a positive effect on team defense during that game against Utah. That is bringing, I think what helps big time with that is guys like Austin Watson, who people may say he's a plug. He chipped in with a tip in goal, but he's a pretty good defensive player out there. You've got guys like Elmer Soderblom came back. He had a goal, beautiful goal off a feed from Vladimir Tarasenko. He's got reach. He goes to the corners. He is a good defensive player. So when you get these guys back that do help on the defense and your effort goes up, you do mitigate the shots. You do provide less chances for the other team. You are better on the penalty kill. So it's just the fact of some people getting healthy. And for as much as people want to trash Jeff Petrie is a decently good defender as long as he's in his spot where he's supposed to be. When Jeff Petrie is bad, he's leaving his guy wide open. But Jeff Petrie is decent at breaking up plays, getting in lanes, getting in the way, and getting the puck out. It's the lapses down near the net that killed Jeff Petrie, mainly. So you got some key guys back that allowed you to improve your team defense. I'm sure the terrible ice conditions helped that out a little bit. But like you said, Ryan, an extremely important 2 points where it seems like everyone around you is either winning or getting into 3-point games, which is absolutely what you don't want. And in order to get in, you need to win a majority of these games down the stretch, which is just, I mean, to me, it seems impractical. It's a very small percentage chance that you're going to do that, but you are not mathematically eliminated yet.
And you know what sucks the most is that you look at the PK in particular. Last year, they were, for the entire season, they went shorthanded 240 times. They allowed 49 goals. They killed penalties at a 79.6% rate. This season, they've gone shorthanded 163 times, and they've allowed more goals against at 50 at a 70 or 69.3% rate. If you were at that same rate versus how many times shorthanded right now, you're easily in a wild card, if not battling for the 3rd spot in the division. That is how impactful negatively, in my opinion, this shorthanded group or this PK group has been for this team, because they've had one of the top power plays in the league. Really, the last 2 seasons officially, this year in particular, has just popped off like no other. And it's been really their saving grace. But the biggest thing you always look back on, I think we talked about it a little bit last year, if they could, even in the season preview, if the penalty kill was effective, you've got that combined percentage pushing you up over 100% in terms of what you're looking at for power play plus penalty kill. You're potentially a playoff team. But because Detroit's PK has been so abysmal, now you're seeing us on the outside looking in, and you're just trying to figure out what the hell happened. And really, I mean, if we go back to the coaching change, I get it. Maybe it was 1 month too late. I don't know. But I think if that was the small fix from this year to last year, because goals are way down against and for. But at the same time, I mean, we knew that there was going to be a goals for hit as a whole because of what was lost. There's a high expectation for guys coming in. But just the fact of the matter is that they're already at more goals against on the penalty kill versus last season. That really explains quite a bit.
Yeah, but here's my thing. It's 3 years in a row now that you're pretty much in the same situation where you're in a playoff spot. I know the first year it was a little bit different. They had those back-to-back games against Ottawa. They kind of got blown out in both of those games. They got bullied. And Eisenman's like, okay, we're punting on this. And he made a smart decision on that case. Last year, you get to the point where, Larkin gets hurt, which is unfortunate. and you go on, what was it, a 7-game losing streak, and then you miss the playoffs by 1 point. This year, you get to the trade deadline, you don't do a whole lot, plus you lose Andrew Kopp prior to, and then your acquisition
And
for the trade,
Rasmussen.
and Rasmussen, correct. And your acquisition from the trade deadline that was an internal acquisition in Carter Mazer goes out and gets hurt in what is second shift. So it's just bad luck. But at the same time, do you dig deeper and you start asking tougher questions like what's going on in the leadership? I'm not questioning Dylan Larkin directly. I'm not questioning Steve Yzerman directly. I'm just saying as a whole, as a umbrella question, I guess broad strokes kind of question. What is going on down there? Where is why is it seem like when one bad thing happens, it snowballs? There's something, we have to get to the root of that problem. And until we get to the root of that problem, I mean, I'd hate to say that we're going to be in the same situation next year, but who knows?
Go back to when Todd McClellan joined this team. What did he say from the outside looking in about this team?
There are a lot of duplicates.
What else? Fragile.
Oh, okay.
The outside looking in, this is a fragile hockey team. They are showing that to a T with this stretch really going back since the end of the Four Nations. Your leading scorer since the Four Nations came out has been Patrick Kane. He has been rejuvenated. Really, since McClellan took over, he's been one of your best players.
Dude got a 2-week break.
Sure, yeah. But he's also got 19 points in 15 games coming into tonight. He's been your best player on the ice in terms of scoring. You've got Alex DeBrincat right behind him at 15 and 15. Then you've got Larkin and Raymond. All guys that should be your top 4 scorers. I get that. But really, Raymond and Larkin not being at a higher level in terms of points is what's hurting your team. What you're not seeing from guys like Tarasenko, 6 points in 15 games since the Four Nations break. A guy that I think ultimately, when we talked at it before the season started, you needed him as your replacement to Perron. There's no reason he shouldn't have been. He has been easily the most underwhelming contract that Steve Yzerman has brought onto this team.
And there's no reason for that to be the case either with how he performed in Florida.
No, I'd say he's been worse than Hall.
That's
for a contract to, well, and I'm not even sure I could say for a contract to, I would say for expectations versus reality.
Hall was brought on to be a depth defenseman. Tarasenko is brought on to be middle six
scoring winger. Yeah.
As well as a power play specialist, because that is what he has been. He has been a multi 30-goal scorer. His job throughout his career has been to put the puck in the net. He has not done that.
To be a force. Like, he's a big guy. He's not small.
Now, I get it. Even looking at Florida and with Ottawa, there's arguments that he's been floating. Sure. But at the same time, you're looking at a 32, 33-year-old forward that should be able to come in, use his skill to his advantage, and help this team win hockey games. And it hasn't happened.
There's no reason why he's fallen off a cliff. You know, he had a pretty decent season last year with the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators, half and half, or not half and half, but, you know,
20 plus goals. He's not going to touch that this year. That's the thing.
And he had a good playoffs too. You know, he had a couple big power play goals, if memory serves correct. That's definitely a disappointing contract that was signed. It's a 2-year deal, so you're probably not going to move it. I mean, I guess you probably could, but I mean, who's taking him at this point? I mean,
he does have the clauses in his contract, so you'd have to approve something. I know that his son, I believe, was playing for Brother Rice this year and was goaltender. I don't know if he was a junior or senior. So, I mean, that could play a lot into it. But at the same time, you need a guy like him to come in and make an impact for your roster. It didn't happen. There's other things that we can talk about, that guys that didn't step up in the right way that we were hoping for that didn't come to a head. But at the same time, you also need your top players to be your top players. Kane and Cat have been absolutely crushing it, especially DeBrincat. This is everything that we had hoped for and more, I think, from him this season when it comes to goal scoring.
Does it come down to just a situation where your defense just isn't good enough, like as a whole? Is that the main problem? Like, is that like, if we were to just say take everything else out of it, the penalty kill, everything all into one, defense is just not good enough on this hockey team, top to bottom.
Well, defense and even strength scoring down the stretch. Yeah, those and
both.
goaltending down the stretch too.
And I would say to your point, Tyler, what you just mentioned, the penalty kill has been the biggest crutch. Like I said, we've already allowed more goals this season than we did all of last season. And we still have how many more games left? 15 games, whatever it is. I'm sorry, that's 15 games since the break. Whatever.
12 games remaining.
12 games left, and we've already set power play goals against. That's unacceptable. We go back, and I think we talked about it quite a bit last year. If we had the same type of PK going on percentage-wise, which would be 10% higher, right around 78, 80%, I really do think this is a completely different team, and we're talking about how can we lock in the playoffs.
But I want to take a step back for a second. You mentioned Alex DeBrincat. Alex DeBrincat did get his 500th point in the game against Utah. It's a huge milestone this season in 70 games played. 33 goals, 28 assists for 61 points. Alex DeBrincat has been exactly what you wanted Alex DeBrincat to be when you acquired him from Ottawa. Took him a season, and last season it was a good season for him, 67 points in 82 games. This season he should eclipse that. 22 of his goals are at even strength. That is where you look at it and you go, that is a guy who is fueling your 5v5 offense, is someone like Alex DeBrincat. They found themselves, like Kane and DeBrincat found themselves an amazing center in Marco Kasper, who will go dig out pucks, who will be heavy, who will plant themselves in front of the net and cause havoc for goaltenders. That is a fantastic line. And me and Ryan talked about it, I think, last week, is if you had any questions about whether or not Marco Kasper could be an NHL center, down this stretch, he's absolutely answered them. I think that he's a very strong, if you can forego, if you say, oh, the center market to buy one in a trade is too expensive, let's dump our money into a winger, I think you could go into next season with Marco Kasper as your 2C and you'd be absolutely fine. I just want to put it out there before we go to break. Your opinions of Alex DeBrincat so far this season, and is this what we needed to see from him after Ottawa fans last season tried to make fun of us for acquiring him?
Yeah, I think it's to a T. I mean, you look at last season, he finished with 27 goals, which matched what he saw in Ottawa. He had 1 point more with 67 from 66. He's looking to surpass that point total now. He's on pace. Like, this is his best goal output since 21-22 when he had 41 with Chicago. So, and actually it's his second, other than he's had 41 goals twice in his career. This is his third best goal output season in his career. This is what you needed from this type of player and what we were expecting. The expectation, I think, was pretty clear with him, at least as a fan, is that this is a guy that should be going out scoring you 30 to 40 goals in a year. And he's done that. And I think, but what's important, I think, when you look at his body of play, it hasn't been just offensively. And that has been the impact. And we talked about it, I think, toward the end of last season, where things really started to become important, is that his play defensively improved a lot, especially when he got called out by Lalonde. But this year it has carried over. And with the coaching change, it has also improved. And you could say the same about, without getting off subject, with Patrick Kane. You're seeing a 200-foot game. Yeah, is every shift? No, they don't need to. But with DeBrincat, he's using his speed. He's not afraid to use the body, but it's also leading to so many different scoring opportunities. That is what you were hoping for from him, and it is worth every bit of the contract.
Tyler, your thoughts on Alex DeBrincat, and then we're going to go to break.
I was just going to say, DeBrincat's, he's meeting expectations. If he gets to 35, 40 goals, I mean, he's getting to those expectations that we had when Steve Yzerman went and traded for him 2 summers ago. The other thing that I'll just say quickly, Yzerman clearly nailed that trade. That's for everybody that wants to give Yzerman shit, myself included. I will take credit for calling a spade and saying, okay, look, I love Steve Yzerman. Great hockey player, a legend, one of the best players of all time, a great general manager in Tampa, everything like that. But sometimes you do have to ask the tough questions. I'm not saying he should be fired or anything crazy like that. I did see people like that on Twitter and whatever. But when you say, "Oh, Eisman should be fired" or something stupid like that, well, go back to the Alex DeBrincat trade. I mean, he brought you in a bona fide 30-ish goal scorer.
Granted, this was pretty much the only place DeBrincat wanted to go.
Right, but still, I mean, he nailed the trade. You didn't give up a whole lot for him to come here. And you signed him to an extension at the same time. So good on Steve Yzerman for that. Good on Alex DeBrincat for coming in. One thing I just want to touch on just quickly with DeBrincat, he's one of those players, man. He might be small, but don't tell him that, because he goes into the corner and he gets those pucks. He's
Tyler's
good on the
saying he's got that
forecheck.
dog in him.
He does. He has that dog in him. He's not afraid to go into the corner, even though he's 5'8", 5'8", 180, 160, something like that. So yeah, I mean, that's the one thing about Alex DeBrincat that I think a lot of people don't realize, that he's not afraid to go to those tough areas, and he'll throw his shoulder every once in a while too. So he's not afraid to do that either. But yeah.
All right, before we head to break, just in from Max Boltman, Berggren and Lagesson in, Soderblom and Petrie out. So we are going to take a quick break. We will be back. We'll talk a couple more updates before we wrap the show. So give us 1 second, word from our sponsors. We'll be right back. This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means it's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. So download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
And we're back, and we have a few other updates to go through. The first one, since Petr Mrazek was hurt, Sebastian Cossa is now called up. He is actually currently with the team in Colorado. It looked like Talbot was listed as not available, so they're not saying he's hurt. And generally when they do not available, it's like they're sick or something. Like, it's not really an injury, they're ill. Nothing else, though, about Cam Talbot. So Sebastian Cossa, as of right now, he is backing up Alex Lyon. And I don't think he'll get games, but normally it doesn't make sense to call up a guy like Cossa unless the other goalie is not going to be available for a little bit, because you're taking him away from Grand Rapids.
Which is funny and scary, because last night, if I saw correctly, Talbot was your e-bug.
He was. He wasn't even dressed.
No, and now you go to tonight, and he's out of the equation, and Cossa is your backup. So I saw Lockdown talking about it with Brian, in that you can only bring Cossa up on emergency conditions, like if it is to what you just explained. So it's concerning for sure, because we don't know what's going on there. I think that there's been concern that Talbot's just maybe overworked at this point, and we've talked about that. It's like the Groundhog Day conversation, really, with Red Wings the last 3-4 years with goalies.
Same fucking thing over and over again every single year.
But without speculating, it's nice to see that the first call up is Sebastian Cossa, and this is where you see it makes sense with the Husso trade, that the door is wide open. If he has to come in, let's see what you got. Have at it, kid.
Imagine him robbing Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, Marty Nate.
Just shut your mouth. Like, we could lose 5-2 if he just had a beautiful like rob of McKinnon, highlight reel, just like save, injected into my
Mac. I don't think I want to lose.
In the words of Elliot Friedman, my nipples are erect.
Amazing. One of the other big pieces of news from this week, the Detroit Red Wings have reassigned Emmitt Finnie from the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL to the AHL's Grand Rapids Griffins. For those of you unfamiliar with Emmitt Finnie's work, first, kid looks like he's 12 years old. He is 19. Yeah. When they did a video interview with him, I'm like, you cannot convince me he is not 12. He was a 7th round pick in 2023, number 201 overall, 190 pounds, 6'1" forward. I mean, again, so now these are overager stats in the WHL. 19 is considered overager. In 55 games played, 37 goals, 47 assists for 84 points. The season before that, 62 games played, 19 goals, 40 assists for 59 points. He just, at every level, he has increased his output. He has increased the work that he's put in and the effort that he's put in, and it's producing for him. And he's become a very, very good player. And it's not that just he's an extremely high scoring overager in what is considered a kids league, a very junior league, but it's how he's playing, the habits that he has gotten into, and what he's been able to do in the role he's been assigned for a not great Kamloops team. So Emmitt Finnie does get to go to Grand Rapids. The Red Wings did sign him to a contract, so he's actually under contract from Detroit. And I mean, for a kid who was a 7th round pick, that's really impressive.
Hopefully that provides a boost to Grand Rapids, because they've been up and down really the last month and a half, if you want to go back quite a ways. And he's a big body forward. If he can come in and provide a spark, I like the comments he made that he had a taste of it last year. Now he knows what to expect coming into it. And if he can take what he's learned and apply it, but also grow from it and provide an impact for this team, win. Because he's had a great year, as you mentioned. He's really just kind of elevated himself in a way that you would hope a prospect would. And the fact that he was drafted where he was, he's got a lot to prove. This is where you hope, air quotes, that something big happens, because then they need a win in any which way they can. And if this is one of them, I'll take it.
I agree 100%. I mean, they need a situation where they luck into a player like this, or, I mean, you know, we have discussed that this development model that the Wings have is working. I mean, you do have your younger players that have come up and made an impact. We haven't had one that's a high draft pick, or that's a lower draft pick like that, like a 7th round pick or anything like that.
Besides Elmer,
what was he?
Well, like big, I think he's referring to like big scoring impact player, though.
Exactly. I'm saying like someone that was a 6th, 7th, 5th round pick that turns out to be somehow a 30-goal scorer.
Elmer Soderblom, round 6, number 159.
Okay, so there's your 6th round pick that has finally cracked the lineup. So I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, you see these Stanley Cup contenders, not every single player on those teams are drafted and developed. And some of them are drafted and developed, but I'm saying like they're not all high draft picks. Some of them are 5th round pick, 6th round pick, 7th round pick.
Well, unfortunately, we're past the days of a Datsuk and a Zetterberg being 6th and 7th round picks, and you now have those guys coming up. It's not saying it's impossible, but it is that rare, and that's why we haven't really seen that land. But to your point, if Soderblom can continue to be impactful, that solidifies your bottom 6, but also gives you flexibility to move a guy like him up and down the lineup, as we've already seen. Same with Rasmussen. I get it. Top 10 pick. Should he have been there?
Not Probably an Yzerman pick.
Not an Yzerman pick, no. But he's doing what he has to do when given the opportunity. And I think that's what's huge with Soderblom, because of what we've seen with him in the recent history when it comes to Grand Rapids and really with Detroit last season. Was the work ethic going to be there? Was the attitude going to be there? He's done a 180, and now he's being an impactful player. We know the skills there. Now, can he continue to build off that and help this team? And I think so.
I don't think anyone can say Yzerman can't draft anymore, because we see what's happening, where the kids are going, and how they're performing, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. The last bit of news from Red Wings prospects at LGRW Prospects over on the Twitter. Michael Brandstad-Nygaard is currently playing in the Swedish Championship with Skellefteå AIK. After that, the 19-year-old's plan is to finish the season in North America. The talent's talent agent confirms. So after Brandon Nygaard's season is over, he will be playing in Grand Rapids, and he plays on the same team as Axel Sandin Pellikka, and we hope that he comes over to play for Detroit as soon as their season is over as well. Right now, Brandon Nygaard, he is 6'1", 207 pounds. He's 19 years old and is a winger. And this season has 5 goals and 6 assists for 11 points in 42 games. This is his first SHL season. I assume he will go back to the SHL. Well, I'm not going to make that assumption yet, because I thought he might have made Grand Rapids this year, but they chose to put him in the SHL. So he could play in Grand Rapids next season just to get, because what you're looking for is a big body powered forward, right? With a really good shot.
Yep.
And he's that guy that you're hoping. So maybe you get him into Grand Rapids next season and then see where he's at.
This is going to be a very interesting offseason, because you've got several high caliber prospects that a lot of fans have been wanting to have in Detroit, but does it come at the cost of, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but be careful what you wish for as a fan. Because to have these guys that we know have a lot of skill that are playing at a men's level in some of the top leagues in the world, not in the NHL currently, when they finally get here, there's going to be some growing pains. Can we handle those things and progress this team forward? Because it's going to be tough, but they're really fucking good.
The more you can hit on some of these players, the better off you are. That includes Brandon Nygaard as well. Like, it's one of those things that not every team that is built through the draft, and everything is built a little bit different. Like, what Yzerman's doing here is different than what he did in Tampa. You know, he inherited Stamkos and Hedman. Those are phenomenal players. And then he did draft Kucherov, and he did draft Point, and he did draft a lot of those other guys. But every team building is different. Even the same general manager builds a team a little bit differently in their different stops, because you inherit different things in the stops that you're at. We can't question Steve Yzerman's drafting. We cannot question that anymore. We know that some of these guys are going to go on to be phenomenal players. Here's the thing, and the one thing that I did get in an argument with people on Twitter, not every single one of these prospects that is drafted and somewhat developed is going to play for the Detroit Red Wings. There are things called trades, and you have to give something up to get something. You know, you think that this is a can't miss prospect, and then all of a sudden that's all they are. They're a prospect, and they're in a trade, and you're getting something back that's proven. I'm not saying it has to happen. I'm just saying that likely, more often than not, you'll have a situation where one of those guys is traded. I'm not saying Sandin Pellikka. I'm not saying Nygaard. I'm not saying anybody specifically, but there will be come a time where you look at the roster and, okay, we're full. We have a need that we need to go out and get to hopefully get to the playoffs, and we have to give this up to get it. And I'm not saying for a rental. I'm saying for something that's more than just a rental.
Ryan, I am going to let you respond and then give your final thoughts.
Deal. I get what you're saying, and I understand that fully. But when you're in that position to finally get rid of high-level prospects, you're a team that's challenging for the Stanley Cup. Even with what I mentioned earlier, if this team had turned on its head the penalty kill and they're at 80%, they might be pushing for that third spot. But even if they're pushing for the third spot in the division, do you think that's a Stanley Cup caliber team?
No, but I think there's a slow build. I think you go from rebuilding to a middle stage where you're not bad enough to be the worst team in the NHL, and you're trying to get better and get better. And then you get to a stage where you're like on the precipice of making the playoffs, and not saying you have to mortgage the future to just get in the playoffs. I'm not saying that at all, but getting to the playoffs is beneficial with this particular group that you have. The Larkin's been to the playoffs, but I'm talking about the Raymonds. I'm talking about DeBrincat, obviously, has been to the playoffs at the Hawks. But besides that, I'm talking about your homegrown guys, your Siders, your Edvinsons, eventually your Cossas. Like, though that it's going to be beneficial. Even if you lose in 5 games, it's beneficial to make the Stanley Cup playoff.
All right,
because there's a build.
Hold on, time out. Stop. You went completely off the point. You're talking about the guys that are there now.
Yep.
Trying to get in the playoffs now. What I'm saying is the guys that we just talked about, them not being here in the next season or so, which is what really the whole purpose has been for the quote unquote Iser plan, has been to build out of the draft. If you trade those pieces away now, knowing like you look at other teams, like you look at the Buffalo and Ottawa trade, for instance, with Cousins, we would have had to have traded away Marco Casper and maybe either an Edvinson or a Johansson, probably an Edvinson, to bring back Dylan Cousins. Would that have been okay for you?
I mean,
and that's just talking about roster players. We're not even getting into the prospects yet.
I'm okay with it.
No,
I'm okay. But here's the thing. Dylan Cousins is 24 years old.
Sure.
Simon
Like,
Edvinson's
that
what,
fits
22?
into your window. That fits into your window. I'm not saying Edvinson, but Johansson.
I'm
Okay.
saying to meet what Ottawa gave up, you're now you're not.
Yeah.
What
Ryan team is saying is that what Ottawa gave up, if we would have given up that same thing, you're not improving. You're at the same level because you've given up too much at that point.
I'm straying away from my point a little bit to make this point. They're building through the draft. They're trying not to trade away all the capital they have right now to make this team competitive for more than 3 seasons. That's the point. Does it suck? Fuck yeah. Because we all wanted a trade. We all wanted something to help out either the middle of the offense in terms of a center or to help the depth on the defense because we know it's not good enough. And we talked about the penalty kill tonight. I'm going to continue this into my final point. This, while I said before the season, is a turning point for Steve Yzerman in his tenure. It's a make or break year. You had to make the playoffs. His expectation for this team was the playoffs, and I don't blame him. You look at it on paper, they should have been there. They have underperformed. You can blame the coaching, and I do. I look at Lalone 100%. We complained about it really from the get-go because there was no reason you had a team much of the same performing the way that they did all the way until he was fired around Christmas. It should have been a month earlier. If it was a month sooner, and now you've got Todd McClellan in charge, would that have happened? I don't know. But if McClellan was in charge come Thanksgiving rather than Christmas, this is a team that's comfortably in a playoff spot, in my opinion. This is what they are capable of and where they should be. That should be the expectation, especially now moving forward with what they've got coming in the pipeline and what they've built up in terms of their drafting or free agency period. Has it been great? No. There's also 31 other teams in the NHL that are trying to do the same thing you are every year. It's a dog eat dog world. The biggest thing that can hopefully play into Detroit's favor is this rising salary cap. Will it work out? We don't know. But at the same time, they've got some potential huge pieces that are going to be vying for a roster spot coming into next season. And that is what we as fans and what we've all talked about for the Iser plan are finally starting to see. Because guess what? As we've said many times before, we're drafting these guys at 18 years old, not 23 years old or 22 years old, like we see with the NFL. The MLB is the same way. It takes a long time for a guy to build up and be actually impactful in Major League Baseball. Basketball, 18. Football, 23. Basketball is the one exception. Sorry, Tyler.
No, not to cut you off. Frank Saravalli was talking on his podcast, and he was talking about general managers that are on the hot seat. Not saying Yzerman's on the hot seat, so don't take that the wrong way. But he was saying that, like, how I think they said over under how many general managers are fired this summer, and he said over 4. And he said, I wonder about Detroit, not Yzerman, but he said, I wonder about the front office in Detroit, who's safe, who's not. And then he also says, I wonder about the room itself, as in the players. I don't know what that means.
I'll touch on one more thing. I mean, to that point, it is concerning, but a lot of that's going to come out. And I think that Larkin, of all people, is probably the most frustrated because you look at a guy that he made the playoffs when he first got here and he has been there since. What happens this offseason is going to be a turning point for where this rebuild Iser plan goes. And I think this is going to be the nut up or shut up moment for Steve Yzerman as the general manager, because you've got guys that are going to be old enough to make this roster, and we'll see what happens. But on that point, already around 33.
To that point, you're saying it's going to get worse before it gets better then, basically. Potentially.
You don't know.
We'll see what happens in the offseason.
Future conversation.
Tyler is at SealDog91. I am at Bringing the Wing. You follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. The puck drops in like 8 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up. We'd like to give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on, and where you can get our cool exclusive t-shirt collection. Go there, click on the Keep It Local tab, and click on the Grindline Podcast for that. They are also going to be doing a Keith Gave book signing on opening day, or on opening weekend, basically, I think is what they're calling it for baseball. But he is going to be there on April 2nd, I believe, in the morning. I will get down there at some point. Ryan, are you going to make your way down there at some point?
Well, my projects just went sideways at work, so now I'm going to have some availability. So I'm probably going to come down.
Cool. So we will be there on probably on the 2nd. We'll keep everyone updated online. So follow us on social media for updates on that. But also go over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, turn on those notifications. You'll get notified whenever an episode goes live. So that's going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.